There's a strange plague spreading in my hometown. It only affects children. As we entered the hospital, I looked around and saw several families with young children in the waiting area. A few of them glanced my way, and the light caught their eyes, revealing irises tinted in crimson hue. They glowed red like old photos that hadn't developed quite right. There were so many children just experiencing the same symptoms as my daughter, Juliana. And yet I hadn't seen any on the local news. Still, word was beginning to spread around the town that there was a congestion going around. Only amongst the children, at least for now. The trying nurse looked up and down, scribbling something on a piece of paper. I handed her the necessary identification, including my Patreon company ID badge. Then I took a step back and waited for her to ask any questions. Symptoms? Red eyes, poorly timed laughter, odd statements, no suspicious cravings. I gulped down a dry lump in my throat, thinking about what my daughter had since that morning at the breakfast table. Nope, I lied. The nurse gave me a hard, cold stare for a few moments, then scribbled something and continued her questions. How long has this been going on for? Just today. The red eyes start about 20 minutes ago. That's when I brought her here. Okay. Have her put on this wristband and wait over there to be called in. Don't touch anything. It shouldn't be long. My daughter snapped the band onto her wrist. It made an electro streaming sound. Two green lit lights up on either side, next to the Proton Company logo, the mega corporation which ran the high-tech corporated town where we live. When I first got the job in Pleasant Hills, I thought it was idyllical. Perfect place to raise a family. When the recruiter told me about the salary and the benefits, I nearly jumped for joy. But now I was coming to realize that this quaint little town was not entirely perfect. There was something spreading amongst the population, something like anything I'd seen or heard of before. The two of us sat down in the waiting room and my daughter began to eye the toys and books in the corner. Without asking, she stood up and wandered over to the table pile with reading material. Juliana, I called out, but she didn't stop. A woman sitting near the book stood up quickly and moved away as someone with leprosy were approaching. I felt a pang of anger, but I realized I couldn't blame her. None of us knew what we were dealing with yet. I was more than a little afraid too. My daughter picked up a colorful books and began to leaf through the pages, scanning the print quickly with her eyes. Red eyes, darting back and forward. She seemed to realize the woman next to her was staring and turned her head to quick glare at her. There should be a loud hissing sound. It sounded like a territorial street cat. She snapped her teeth and lunged at the woman. I jumped and pulled her back. Juliana, no, what are you doing? She went back to looking at the book as the woman ran out the waiting room screaming. She got it too. I looked over to see a man with his daughter and son. The three of them were dressed as if coming from church, but there was something wrong in his children's expressions. Something unsettling. They were staring at me with wide, vacant grins. Their eyes were glazed over and their teeth looked too sharp, as if being drawn out by some invisible force, being stretched into fangs. The change was subtle, but noticeable. Yes, just today I began to see the changes. Lord help us. How long have your children? Winters, Juliana. A woman's voice called from the down to the ER, interrupting her conversation. Winters, Juliana? I stood up quickly and grabbed her hand. She brought the book with her. I'm sorry. She grabbed the fork and stopped her. I saw the nurse gesturing at the book. The woman looked unconcerned. Keep it. She's wearing a respiratory mask, gloves, goggles, and a bright blue full-body protective suit. As she led us into a room, a sign on the door read, "Negative pressure room." Should I be wearing a mask? I asked her as she left. Probably, but you'd be exposed by now anyway. The doctor will be through shortly. Exposed to what? The door should shut with a hiss and a bang. The woman stood outside for a few moments, taking off her gear, but made no effort to communicate with us or answer my question. A huge window at the front of the room allowed us to view into the ER, and we watched as she disappeared to the crowds of nurses and doctors and patients. The two of us were left in the eerie silence. Juliana opened the book again and sat down across legend on the floor. Part of me wanted to tell her to get off the ground since who knew what had happened in there. But she looked so innocent for those few moments I couldn't bring myself to do it. She looked like herself again, like a normal kid, except for the red eyes glowing as she glanced up. The PA came on suddenly. A woman's frantic voice began to speak. Code Crimson in effect. Code Crimson in effect. All security personnel to the emergency room waiting area now. The message repeated again 2 more times. Then the speaker cut. What's the Crimson code, Daddy? Juliana asked, looking up from her book. Is it a fire? I don't think so, honey. I think this is something different. Just keep reading your story. A short stream came out the room. I looked out the large window to the ER. For a few seconds there was nothing. My heart pounded dully in my ears and I could feel it in my throat as I gulped down a dry lump. A woman in pale green scrubs raced past, blood shooting from her fresh wounded on her arm, spraying the wall right as she ran by. She was screaming and looking over her shoulder, spinning her like her life depended on it. Gunfire could be heard from down the hall in the waiting area from where we just had been. Get down, I yelled at Julia. Running over to her, someone shooting. I ran to my daughter and pulled her up behind the chair, which was up against the wall. The two of us hid behind it. I heard people running past the side, but was too afraid to look. The gunfire was consistent now and getting closer. I could hear the things breaking outside the room from stray bullets. Just hope they wouldn't find us. Daddy, I'm hungry, Juliana said quietly. Now, honey, please. How could she be thinking of food at a time like this? I wondered myself. More gunshots rang out, sounding very close now. I ventured a glance from behind the chair we were using as cover. In the glass, I saw men in black body armor with machine guns in their hands. They were firing rapidly and backing up, moving away from the waiting area. Security enforcement officer was written on each of the uniforms with the name beneath it. I recoiled in surprise as something leaped through the air like a wild animal, tackling one of the security guards and sending him flying backwards as the gun firing as he fell. He repeated screams were heard muffled through the door, and a few seconds later, it was the children with red eyes. Dozens of them from the waiting room were now rampaging through the ER, chasing nurses and doctors, running around on all four like animals. A few people were on the ground, and the children appeared to be feeding on them, ripping out their throats and feasting on their bloody flesh. The power suddenly shut off with a dull click, and the ER was cast into total darkness for several moments. I'm so hungry, Daddy, Juliana said from behind me, moving closer. The emergency lighting switched on and everything was cast in a dim glow from above. I spun around to see my daughter moving towards me, a hungry look in her eyes. She was smiling like a hungry piranha, and I could see her teeth growing insidiously and longer, drawing into needle-sharp points. What are you doing, Juliana? Stop, don't get any closer. I felt as if she shouldn't let her know how scared I was. If she could sense my fear, I wonder if she would lunge at me like a wild animal. Something slammed into the glass behind me. I spun around to see a teenage boy smashing his forehead repeatedly against the window. His eyes a blazing, burning red. The glass began to spiderweb and slowly crack from its center. I heard it crunching and breaking from each impact as she bashed his skull against the window again and again. I was so caught up with that I didn't even notice the reflection of my daughter lunging at me from behind. But I saw her at the last second quickly duck away from it, surprised at my own quick instincts. The glass shattered as she crashed into it and went flying through, landing hard against the boy on the other side. Something was wrong with them. Something very, very wrong. And my fight or flight instinct suddenly took over, more specifically my flight instinct. I leaped at the broken window, broken glass, piercing my palms, began to run back towards the waiting room. When I looked back, I saw my daughter and teenage boy. They were scrambling to their feet, racing towards me like all fours like jungle cats. Their eyes were blazing red. The horrible sight of them chasing me distracted me from my route, and I found myself slipping in the fresh blood and sliding and wrenching back as I fell down in the middle of the sticky red puddle. I hit the ground hard and bit my tongue, tasting coppery blood a second later. Stay down, someone screamed behind them and began to fire. I thankfully saw that they were shooting bullets. Small syringes full of green fluid impacted nearby, missing them. But a few found their targets and the two of them turned around, racing back towards their attacker. Their movements were even slowed by the heavy dose of tranquilizer. The man screamed as the two of them took him down, turning off his black body armor, feeding on his flesh. A second later, he screamed in pain and yelled at me to run. After a moment's hesitation, I began to sprint back towards the entrance where we come in. A pair of sliding steel doors separated the waiting area from the ER. I raced towards them and began to hammer my fist against them, screaming to let me be out. Looking up to my left, I saw a security camera pointed at me. I haven't been bit, I screamed, thinking for some reason they might be important. Maybe I just seen one too many zombie movies. Just please let me out. Maybe that was the right thing to say. Since the doors opened, I burst through them a second later. Two security guards in heavy armor were on the other side. They were closing the doors. I looked back through and saw my daughter racing towards us. Blood smeared around her mouth like a strawberry jam. Then the steel door shut. My daughter's in there, I screamed. We gotta help her, please. Please help my daughter. Something impacted the steel door on the other side, deforming the metal and bending into a shape of a child's skull. It's us you should be worried about, the security guard said. I looked around and saw the hospital was being sealed. Thick steel shutters were closing and blocking out the sun, casting the waiting room into semi-darkness. Cold red crimson, lockdown particles in effect. A robotic voice said from overhead. Shelter in place. Do not approach the infected. Do not attempt to reason with any of the infected, or to speak with them. Do not make eye contact. Assistance is on the way. Do not panic. Another loud bang came from a steel door separating the room from the ER. I saw a gap was forming, big enough to see through, and I peered through it, looking familiar, except for the color of it, crimson like a sunset. Peekaboo, Daddy, my daughter said, giggling. I see you. I do want to say, guys, before I do this video, I don't think you guys are hearing this, and I am sick right now, so any of the new video I will post, it will be, my voice will be like a bit sluggish. I have like a lump throat, and like it's like it kind of like builds up, and it's kind of hard to speak and just keep the same tone, and it's kind of it makes me stutter much more than I usually do. But by the way, I've been trying to like work on like how I'm trying to, I don't know, like I think I need to buy a mic, because I'm not sure how I can increase the volume of my videos and because you guys can hear me. But it's because I don't really speak clearly sometimes, and I think I need to work on that. I think as the more I go, the more I get better. So bye.